We are in our last week of a series that we're calling Impossible, in which we explore how God interacts with our lives in the midst of impossible circumstances. Nick started the first 2 weeks of this series unpacking the story of the resurrection of Jesus. Last week, we talked about how within all trauma, stress, disruption, and change, there's an invitation to grow. We can either say yes to this invitation to grow, deepen, transcend, move beyond, or we can say no to this invitation and entrench, regress, and become bitter. And at the end of last Sunday, I thought to myself, self, because I have conversations with myself all the time, self, that might be the only sermon you have for this series, because that thought, that idea, that concept that there's an invitation, whatever is coming my way, that I can say yes to an invitation to grow. That's been a huge help to me. And when I think impossible circumstances, that's what I instantly go to. But we needed to talk about something today, so I went on this quest to figure out the content for this morning, just inspiring your confidence here at the beginning, right? And so this series called Impossible was just begging me to talk about miracles, the miraculous. And I kept fighting it and saying, nope, I'm not going to do that for a variety of reasons, but I just couldn't shake it. I just couldn't avoid the topic. So dag nabbit, we're talking about miracles today. And I say this for a couple reasons. You might be sitting there going, oh my gosh, Joel's anti-miracles. I'm not anti-miracles. But let me give you this preface. I'm not a miracle fiend. And I don't believe miracles occur if I have a certain brand of faith or if I belong to the correct denomination, because you know God cares about denominations because they were his idea. You know, the common factor between all denominations is they all think that they understand God better than the other one. That's the common thing, the one common thread we all hold. Second, whenever we talk about miracles, chances are you're instantly blasted to this time where you hoped and prayed that some cosmic force would miraculously intervene, but it didn't happen. So being told that you just need to believe harder or this wasn't God's will is not only brutally defeating, but it calls into question who this God character is. I thought God was supposed to be all-loving, all-knowing, omnipresent. Aren't miracles supposed to be this easy thing? What gives God and a variety of religious traditions have brutalized the nature of God and simultaneously ignored the fact that we live in an organic universe that was set into motions many, many years ago. And God does intervene in this environment, but the nature in which he intervenes is fuzzy to us. And lastly, I don't go chasing miracles because statistically they rarely happen. But that does not mean they don't ever happen, because they have and they can and they do. So we're talking about it today, all right? I know I've mentioned my mother and her struggle with cancer a few times, but that's just because it was such a profound season in my life in which a lot of things became clear, many things became fuzzy, and everything else got turned on its ear. So a story from that time. August 17th, 2016, I get a call from my dad. Joel, you have to get here now. It doesn't look like your mom is going to make it past today. You know, my wife and daughter couldn't leave town for a couple hours, so I grabbed our youngest son, Gabe, and jumped in our other car and drove 100 miles per hour from Minneapolis all the way here, which brings me to the point where in the story I should mention how grateful I am for all our friends in law enforcement that attend this church. And most of the time I do the best I can to be an upstanding, law-abiding citizen. But God did create mankind with the unique ability to invent things that go very, very fast. And I needed to get here very fast. So we got here in 5 hours. I come into the hospital, and Mom is in really bad shape. And the cancer had moved to her lungs. Her lungs were full of tumors. She was coughing up units of blood and could barely speak. And finality was very close. And she held on all day. We got all the family there around 11 o'clock that night, and from 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. the next morning, we said everything. It was all of us, all 5 of us kids, our spouses, our kids, just around the bed, just saying everything. And we were saying goodbye. She was actually able to talk for those 3 hours. She was able to say the things that she wanted to say. Her and Dad were able to spend time together. And we were quite confident that she would pass away sometime in the early morning. So we commandeered the entire visitor room of that level of St. Mary's, and all like 12 of us, and we blew up our camping mats and just laid them out there. And 4 hours later, we walk into the hospital room expecting to, get the news or that she's, slowly digressing. And there's Mom sitting up in bed, nothing behind her back, just sitting up, bright-eyed, bushy tails, and says, "Hey, guys," sips cappuccino. The only thing out of my mouth was, "Where'd you get that cappuccino?" I just didn't know what to make of the whole deal. And of course, the medical staff said she was rallying, and sure, people rally all the time, but not when their lungs cannot physically absorb oxygen, okay? That's where we were at. And people rally for a day or 2, 3, 4 max or so. We got 40 more great days with her. And yeah, it was amazing. And she was taking deep, full breaths and just completely fine. It was just a completely different woman from what we had seen just hours before. And it was more than the cappuccino. She still passed away 42 days later. And so if you're being cynical, you could say, well, it's not a real miracle because she wasn't completely healed. But it was 40 more days than we should have had, if you look at it from a medical perspective. I mean, if we had the choice between a complete healing and that miracle we got, of course we'd choose complete healing. Of course we would. But if you had to choose between finality and 40 more great days, what would you choose? Right, great days. So that moment grabbed me by the shirt and made me look a miracle straight in the face. And I could not ignore it. I still don't know how to talk about it. And I can't tell you why we experienced that miracle. So I can't be a cynical jerk and tell you that miracles rarely happen, so just respond to the invitation. Nope. So we're going to talk about these things today. So here's the outline. I'm going to share some thoughts about the nature of God, therefore the potential nature of the miraculous and us encountering it. And I think our image of God greatly affects how we see the world. It's been scientifically proven that our perceptions shape our experiences. So if we have the wrong perception of the miracle maker, could we possibly miss out on encountering the miraculous, or at least recognizing it? So who's God? We're going to answer that in about 15 minutes, or not. There are a variety of denominations within the mainline and evangelical Christian tradition. They all have an interpretation of who God is. Some of us agree on certain points, but a common thread within that interpretation is we're trying to understand God like me. So we've talked about this before, is when we step away from something and we observe it from the outside. We poke it, we prod it, we check it out, we look at it from a variety of angles. We objectify it, okay? Do you think God is objectifiable? Probably not, okay? So the common thread right away from making interpretations about who God is we're already flirting with scary territory because we are putting him in a package of some kind, okay? Very rarely do I see ideas presented about God as this is what we've seen in Scripture God is. Most of the time, people are arguing and using God as kind of this semantic thing to argue their opinion against the other one. All right? So, just to get it straight right away, God is not like me. Though I am like him, God is not like me at all. You can poke and prod me. Have you ever truly poked and prodded God and seen the physical presence? Which would suggest either God doesn't exist or God is way bigger and there's something bigger going on here. I'm going to subscribe to B. All right? Chances are you've changed churches once or twice because the denomination you were with doesn't have it completely right. As if this church has it completely right, okay? The major thing to identify here is no matter which tradition you align with, we put God in some sort of box. Pentecostals will tell you that they're most in line with the Bible because they believe God still moves powerfully in the world. Yet that self-proclaimed alignment with God's true nature still smells a bit fishy. It still smells like institutional pride. Regardless of which tradition you align with, the common story I've heard when encountering devout Christian followers goes something like this. So I was on an airplane and there was a ton of turbulence. I woke up in the middle of the night and I'm not kidding, like the stewardess was flying down the middle, bumping her head, things were going all over the place. But I knew that that plane wouldn't crash because God knew I was on the plane. I have heard that specific story, that rendition, that perspective from a variety of people, from a variety of Christian traditions, in a variety of geographical locations, so much that I've ruled it out as just, I'm always running into conceited people who think that God doesn't care about everyone else. It just happens too often. So, that's losing the plot as far as God and creation goes. So what do we do when we lose the plot in the middle of a story? Oh, we could potentially end up at the wrong place. So what do you do to prevent that from happening? You go back to the beginning of the story. So let's go back to the beginning of the story, Genesis 1:26, one of the first glimpses we see of God in the biblical text. Then God said, "Let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all creatures that move along the ground." So God created human beings in his own image. And in the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said, "Be fruitful and increase in number, fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over every living creature that moves on the ground." Then God said, "I give you every seed-bearing plant on the face of the whole earth and every tree that has fruit with seed in it. They will be yours for food. And to all the beasts of the earth and all the birds in the sky, all the creatures that move along the ground, everything that has breath of life in it, I give every green plant for food." And it was so. Okay, so God creates human beings, every living thing, okay? He creates humans in the image of God, which God at the very beginning is noted as being what? Plural. A communal being. If we're formed in the image of community, do you think community would be an important thing for us to grasp and understand and invest in? Possibly. And if you use this text as a reference, what is required for a human being to be part of this community that's described here? Maybe being human. And for me, for so long, I've fought against that. That has felt too inclusive for me. I've instantly moved to who's in and who's out. But I can't ignore it here because it's in the book. It says community is important Every human being is created in the image of God. Everyone has the divine image. Okay? It's important to pay attention to what's going on inside when I hear something like that. And all of a sudden, I start thinking of who's in and who's out. Okay? Here are some things about this. We're instantly filled with amazement at our special place in creation, particularly our unique intellectual capacity. We're told right away, we're greater than everything else, and we reign over it all. Second, God in communal form creates a being that bears his likeness. Therefore, community is not just a requirement of being human. It's an indicative trait woven into our cells. And all you need to do to bear that image is to be human. Third, this likeness describes our moral potential because this is also a story about justice. God provides for all beings in question, not just us, but the animals also. And you see how the story goes. The story specifically notes that we're greater than all the other animals in creation, but the Creator goes out of his way to definably say, hold on, but I've provided for them too. I've provided for you, but I've also provided for them. This clearly defines what bearing the image of God looks like. We truly resemble our Creator when we demonstrate it through actions of mercy, love, and justice. So we're not just told you're created in my image, but God's saying, also, look, this is what I look like. I look like mercy, love, justice, provision for everything. Is this making sense? Reading off a lot of stuff. It's going to make sense in a moment. If each of us is like God, then all of us together can be active in reflecting the image of God. Ancient peoples would have seen this idea of bearing the image of God in two ways. And number one, that just by being human, we bear the likeness of the divine. Number two, though, there's an activity that we participate in, that we have the potential to reflect the nature of God, but must actively engage in reflecting it. Early writers of the New Testament refer to Jesus as the God-man, particularly because he actively reflected God's nature in what he did and said. And when the New Testament writers make the invitation to become imitators of Christ, they're saying actively become a reflection of God in this world, just as Christ was. It's calling us back to the beginning of the story. There's this very old benediction about exactly this. It says, our body forms its likeness on the earth by the shadow it casts. So do we, by our activity, form our likeness to the eternal God. If we act well, we thereby form his right hand. If we resist evil, we form his left hand. If we do not look at evil things, we form his eyes. If we do not allow our ears to hear lies, we form his ears, and so on. God asks this of us, and we have always to be conscious of it so that we can always do right and not sin. Amen. Is this helping get a clearer picture of maybe who God is? The Rabbi Art Green says, the inner drive to imitate the ever-giving source of life, our Creator, calls forth in us an unceasing flow of love, generosity of spirit, and full acceptance both of ourselves and all of God's creatures. So we bear the image of God, but can also actively reflect it by the way that we live, by the way we live into our purpose of reflecting him in our everyday lives. All right? So that's a biblical, at the very beginning, this is who we're called to be. We're created in the image of God, and God is specifically saying, I am merciful, I am kind, I am just. Be imitators of me and reflect my image in this world. From a scientific perspective, we don't usually talk about God and science together. Science sometimes is viewed as the opposite of faith. Werner Heisenberg, a German theoretical physicist and one of the key pioneers of quantum mechanics, said this: the first gulp from the glass of natural sciences will turn you into an atheist. But at the bottom of the glass, God is waiting for you. So I'm not nearly qualified to take you to the bottom of the glass of natural science. But here's a unique tidbit. Stuff, for example, okay? What's stuff made out of? Atoms. Yes, stuff is made of atoms. And every atom is a nucleus orbited by electrons. Every nucleus built of protons, and every proton is... Then you reach the end of the line, kind of. This unsettling truth that stuff is made of nothing, kind of. We have this theory about quarks and gluons. That's a great band name. And though experiments have confirmed that they possibly exist, they've never been observed physically before, okay? It's too small. They're subatomic particles, and they carry these little fractional electric charges, and you can't see them, and it's so cool. Colossians 1:16, for in God all things were created, things in heaven and on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or rulers or authorities, all things were created through God and for God. He is before all things, and in God all things hold together. We know that something's holding these atoms together. We just can't see what it is. Particles were discovered in 1898. This little Bible verse here, Colossians 1:16, was written 1,800 years before a particle was discovered. And here we are in the 21st century, still trying to figure out what holds it all together. Colossians straight up says, embrace God as the invisible force which holds together all things. Now imagine you're praying for a miracle. And as you're praying, you recognize the divine image of God in the person you're praying for. And you embrace the role of reflecting the image of God when you show love, mercy, and acceptance, and you see the person you're praying for and yourself as being literally held together by the divine energy that is God himself. Does it feel just a little bit more freeing, that perspective, than convincing a giant genie with a white beard in the sky to come and grant you this one wish? When we take God out of the box, God isn't just a semantic excuse to argue. Or he's not how you align yourself politically. All of a sudden, he's the energy that binds you together and keeps us from blowing up into the universe to a bunch of things that just can't be held together. God created the world with a word. And all of a sudden, impossibilities start to maybe feel a little bit possible. You following me? There's so much of trying to figure out what life is all about. Why are we here? Why am I here? What am I doing? What am I supposed to do? What does God want for my life? And I wonder if the anxiety that we all sense from time to time about that, our purpose, that maybe the violence or at best the neutrality that we show to other people around us would be dismantled when we're able to finally maybe recognize just a little bit the divine imprint that every person that we come in contact with has. That maybe we would see that just by being held together, there's a deep purpose here for you that maybe only you can do. That calling is something to think about for sure. But what if God just holding you together and understanding that that's the divine image. And then God is inviting you into a partnership with him. What if that's what brings significance in our world and in your life? Final thoughts about miracles and asking for them. Faith is a posture of yieldedness and not striving. I've always been real concerned when I see someone when someone just goes and begs God for something, primarily because God is supposed to be an all-encompassing love, and I guess I just feel sad when I see anyone striving as if God can't hear them. And I've heard it said before, it's a bit of a harsh quote, but I've heard it said that begging God for something implies you care more about the need than God does. And I've heard that said, but that quote has pulled me into a place many, many times where I've gone, okay, hold on, wait, faith isn't striving, faith is yieldedness. God knows what you mean. And yes, there are probably more accurate ways to pray, possibly, but that's only because prayer can be a reflection of what's going on inside. And you can feel really bound up to ideas about God, which make the whole process of asking for something very, very stressful, okay? So if you find yourself experiencing stress and anxiety, and you're striving in interceding for something in your own life, or probably for someone else, take a breath and understand that God, number one, sees your heart, knows what you mean, but he also is what binds them together and you together. And the fact that you care alone is you living out the divine mission that God has put on your life, right? Because grace, mercy, compassion, etc. I care, therefore I pray. That's a perfect environment, I think, for prayers to be answered. A woman named Ruth Haley Barton, who wrote this book that I just continually read called Strengthening the Soul of Your Leadership, has this beautiful way of addressing prayer, specifically intercessory prayer, where you're asking God for something for someone else. And she says, when I go to pray for someone, I sit and I just become aware of God all around me, because he is, right? He is. I become aware of God all around me. And when I have that awareness, I kind of imagine that person that I'm praying for sitting next to me in that environment, communing with God. And if I feel like I'm supposed to make a request, I'll make a request. If I feel like I'm supposed to say something, I will. But in those moments, I've come to discover that holding them in the presence of God with me is more than enough. Isn't that beautiful? It takes the pressure off. And I've seen God do things in people's lives just holding them in the presence with me and not feeling the pressure to say the right thing, to convince God to work in our situation. Everyone needs hope. In the times of my life where it's been the hardest to have faith for a miracle, I have definitions for certain things that I believe in. And for me, my dark night of the soul definition of prayer is at the very least a place to put my hopes and fears. And you could say, geez, Joel, aiming for the stars with that one. But you know what? God has met me in those moments where I'm saying I have hopes and fears. I've got to put them into prayer. At least they're going there, and I've seen God show up so many times. And so if you're in a dark season of the soul, maybe that would be helpful to you. There are a lot of things in this universe that we do not understand, and blaming God for tragedies doesn't help. The problem with the image of God I just painted is that it shows God not as someone in the clouds who can rescue you, but the one who sits with you within it and can transform you from the inside out. One of the major things plaguing Christians today is this idea of escapism, that this world doesn't matter, that our lives only matter for eternity alone. They matter right here and right now. And Scripture, the Bible as I read it, is all about God making broken things whole again. So would you agree that the world is broken? Would you agree? Have you seen in the Bible where God says, "Behold, I'm making all things new"? Old things have passed away. I'm ushering in a new era. There's something more going on here. Maybe there's an invitation in there somewhere. There are miracles around us every day, and actually the greatest miracle of all is the thing beating inside your chest. Science says the reason that your heart is beating is because your medulla, boy, something's wrong with your medulla oblongata. I know who my Adam Sandler friends are in here. Your medulla sends electric pulses to your heart, telling your heart to beat at a certain rate. And it maintains the appropriate rate of pumping inside your chest to then take oxygen and nourishment to your whole body and your brain, and therefore keep the whole process going. But we don't know where the electricity comes from. That's what's special about being in this environment, in this place. Right next to you is the heartbeat of somebody. Right next to you, there's a miracle. And inside of you, there's a miracle. I wonder how much of life, if we just became aware of the divine image that is in us and in every single person, in the person sitting next to you. I wonder how much more we'd experience the miraculous, or at least be able to recognize it. Amen? The goal of this is not to give you some tricks to get you everything that you want. We know that that doesn't happen. It's not to help you bypass struggle. It's more to give you a new way to see God within it. Maybe it's within our ability to see God's likeness. Maybe it's within that we'll encounter the possibility of miracles. But for the things that we cannot see, for the things we do not understand, because there's a whole universe of it all around us, I hope you experience incredible, restorative, provisional, healing things in your life that you just can't explain. It's my prayer and my hope that we experience that. And God, we look to you. It's just amazing to think about you as this force that binds us all together, that the person just breathing next to us is a miracle in and of themselves, because we don't know what keeps us alive and moving. And we pray for a couple things. We pray that you help us to recognize the small miracles in our lives every day. We pray also that you help us to see you in a broad, big, expansive way, that you, the creator, the giver of infinite love and grace and acceptance, are. That maybe we could just open our minds to that reality a little bit more. And I pray for all of us here in this community that despite the fact that miracles are rare, we make the humble request that miracles will become normal even in our midst. And that we'll be able to hold them with humility and with grace, not lording it over any other group of Christian people or anyone else for that matter, but knowing that by living into the miraculous and holding it with humility, we are reflecting your image across the world. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen.